What if the galaxy's strongest warrior faced a quiet human and lost without a single blow landing? She walked into the arena unarmed, underestimated, and outmatched. Or so they thought. 14 seconds later, the crowd wasn't cheering. They were running. This isn't just a fight story. It's the moment the universe realized they never should have underestimated a human. Stay with us. You won't believe how it ends. If you are new here, then please subscribe this channel and show thumbs up by liking the video. Now let's move toward this wonderful story. No one remembered who signed her up. On the registration list for the Tournament of 9 Stars among gladiators with names like Scourge of 12 Worlds and Bloodwind Reaver, there was simply Lonnie Quill, species, human. A quiet name tucked between giants. Most believed it was a clerical error, maybe a prank played by one of the tournament sponsors. After all, humans were known across the galaxy more for their confusing social habits and clumsy technology than for physical combat. They were diplomats, engineers, and bureaucrats, not warriors. When Lonnie arrived at the combat station, no one even noticed. She didn't wear armor made of living metal or carry a weapon fused to her DNA. She didn't roar, glow, or change colors when threatened. She simply checked in, smiled politely at the confused officials, and moved to her assigned quarters. Her room, like the others, had walls reinforced to contain species capable of melting steel with a scream. Lonnie used hers to practice breathing exercises. That year, the tournament was hosted at the legendary Sky Vault Arena, a floating coliseum circling Thoria Prime's upper atmosphere. The galaxy's fiercest champions gathered there each cycle to battle for glory, profit, and the favor of the 5 sovereign guilds who controlled the core systems. It was a stage where titans clashed, where even a minor match could cause atmospheric disturbances, and where the floor still bore the scars of past winners' signature moves. No one in over 300 years had ever registered as a human, and certainly not alone. Commentators laughed. Viewers laughed. Even the arena AI accidentally flagged her entry for comedy segment consideration. The betting algorithms gave her a 0.0001% chance of survival in round 1. The only wagers placed in her favor came from drunk gamblers, and one particularly curious hive mind that liked betting on statistical anomalies. They all expected her to be eliminated quickly and with great visual drama. Her first opponent was Reeked, a mantis-like champion from the storm world of Grektal, who had won 3 regional titles by using its claws to remove its competitors' limbs in alphabetical order. In the viewing lounge, alien spectators gathered with refreshments, eager to watch the squishy one explode. What they saw instead was unsettling. Reicht attacked fast, a blur of razor arms and shrieking fury, but Lonnie didn't flinch. She didn't fight with rage or speed or the obvious strength that made good holoclips. She sidestepped. She ducked. She waited. And then, with a single precise jab to the back of Reich's head, she ended the match. Quietly. The audience didn't cheer. They stared. Many assumed Reich had suffered a seizure. The arena's medbots rushed in, scanned the defeated champion, and found no error. Lonnie had done it, and she had barely moved. "That's statistically weird," muttered the commentator, Tessael, a feathered species known for its sharp wit and sharper ego. "Let's chalk that up to beginner's luck and mild embarrassment." Round 2, similar. Lonnie faced a warrior from Vectari Prime who could bend gravity around its fists. He never laid a finger on her. She disarmed him, literally, in under 90 seconds, 3 matches in, and the jokes turned nervous. Officials checked her equipment, scanned her for hidden devices, and tested her blood. Nothing. She had the basic enhancements issued to frontier soldiers, a few neural adjustments, a faster reaction time, but nothing that explained her ability to read alien movements like books and dismantle living weapons. With no visible effort, other fighters began watching her matches with more focus than they wanted to admit. She wasn't flashy. She didn't taunt or posture. She didn't speak during combat. But when she moved, it was clean, clinical, like she already knew the outcome and was just waiting for it to happen. By the semifinals, Lonnie's name was being whispered in the dark corners of the competitor barracks. They called her the Void Stepper or the Delay, because she didn't stop her opponents. She just waited for them to undo themselves. Now, only one match remained. The final, Lonnie would face the reigning champion, a behemoth known only as Garoon, whose fists could fracture moons. Garoon's fans had already ordered souvenir holodiscs titled "The Human Who Popped Like a Fruit." Everyone expected the fight to end quickly and violently. As she walked into the Sky Vault Arena for the final match, the crowd of 90,000 roared. Not for her, of course. They cheered for Garoon, who entered surrounded by flames and tribal war. Chants piped in from his home world. Lonnie walked in silently in her standard-issue fatigues, holding a pulse baton that looked more like a walking stick than a weapon. "She's gonna get flattened," said a vendor in the stands, biting into a gravity corn dog. Might as well start cleanup now. But Lonnie didn't seem to notice. She looked straight ahead, calm, as if this was all just a long meeting she was sitting through out of politeness. Tessel's voice boomed through the arena's audio grid. "And now our historic final match. One a warrior forged in supernovas and the other a human." Lonnie didn't react. She was too busy scanning her opponent. Somewhere in the upper tier, a diplomatic observer narrowed his eyes. "She's not nervous," he said quietly. "No," his assistant replied. "She's measuring something." The countdown began. The crowd screamed. Garoon cracked his knuckles with sonic booms. Lonnie exhaled once. Slow, steady. No one had seen her win this far, but no one had seen her lose either. The crowd buzzed with anticipation, loud and electric. Every seat in Sky Vault Arena was filled, from the lowest tier all the way up to the Sovereign Guild boxes suspended in mid-air. Garoon, the defending champion, towered in the center of the arena like a living monument. Nearly 4 meters tall, with a body plated in star-forged bone and shoulders broader than most transport doors, he was the kind of opponent that made others consider retirement before stepping into the ring. He flexed his arms and a ripple of metallic crackles echoed around the stadium. Across from him stood Lonnie Quill, the human no one expected to make it this far. She was smaller than most of the combat drones used in training, and she looked like someone who had accidentally wandered into the wrong room. No fanfare. No armor glow. Just a calm expression and a battered pulse baton in hand. Her fatigues were scuffed, her boots dusty. But her eyes, those told a different story. Quiet, calculating, almost detached. The announcer's voice thundered across the arena. "This is the final match. One more victory stands between our champion and eternal legend. One more breath between the human and obliteration." The signal flashed. Garoon moved like a falling building, fast, heavy, and impossible to stop. His opening strike was a downward hammer fist that could have crushed a tank into powdered metal. Lonnie dodged just in time, barely. Dust burst around her boots as she pivoted to the side. The audience gasped. Garoon didn't stop. He spun, claws swinging in a brutal arc, carving up the arena floor as Lonnie rolled backward, narrowly avoiding dismemberment. She was fast, yes, but not untouched. A glancing blow clipped her shoulder, tearing through her uniform and sending her sprawling. The arena shook with cheers. From above it looked like a rag doll thrown across a storm. She skidded across the cracked ground, her baton tumbling out of reach. In the stands, a trio of analysts from the Arcadian Combat Sciences League took notes with increasing confusion. One of them whispered, "She should be unconscious. A direct hit like that would—" "She's getting up," another interrupted, eyes wide. Lonnie rose to her feet, arm dripping red, her chest rising and falling with steady breaths. No shouting, no anger. She simply looked at Garoon and reached for her baton. Her hand shook for a moment, but she tightened her grip, braced her legs, and nodded once. Garoon didn't wait. He came at her again, each step slamming the ground so hard it sent fragments into the air. The next attack was faster, wilder. 4 punches, a sweeping kick, a headbutt that split the floor where she had been standing. Each time, Lonnie slipped, out of reach, sometimes by mere centimeters. Her movements were no longer perfect. She was tiring. Her lip bled. Her shoulder sagged. Still, she kept going. The crowd was split. Half still cheered for the end. The other half had fallen quiet. Something was off. Garoon wasn't winning the way he should. He was missing too many strikes, growing too angry too quickly. And Lani, she wasn't retreating out of fear. She was watching, tracking, recording every motion. From the luxury boxes, a diplomat named Venra watched with growing concern. She's not being overpowered, she's learning. Below, Garoon lunged again. This time Lani didn't move fast enough. A backhand caught her in the ribs and sent her flying. She hit the wall hard. Cracks spread through the metal and she dropped to the ground like a sack of bones. The audience roared. This had to be it. The scoreboard flickered. Tessel, the commentator, screamed into the audio feed, "The human is down! She's down! No one survives a strike like that!" Lani didn't move. A med drone began to hover from its dock, then she groaned. With effort, she pushed herself upright, using the wall for support. Blood dripped from her mouth. Her left arm hung limp, but her eyes were focused. Not dazed, not broken. Focused. She wiped the blood from her chin and spit on the ground. "You hit hard," she said. Her first words since the match began. The arena froze. Garoon, surprised she could still speak, paused for half a second. It was a mistake. She charged, not wildly, not recklessly. Her steps were precise, measured, grounded in balance. She ducked low, avoided the swipe of his claws, and jabbed her baton into a small seam in his armor just below the shoulder. The baton crackled weakly but connected. Garoon flinched, not from pain but from something new. Disruption. She fell back again, breathing hard. Her legs trembled. The audience didn't cheer this time. They leaned forward. A slow change was happening, like the edge of a storm building far away. For the next minute, Garoon raged, pounding the ground, swinging faster, roaring with frustration. He landed hits, 2 more knocks, one grazing her thigh, another pushing her to the ground again. But each time she rose, the recovery was faster, her dodge cleaner, her counterstrike sharper. He wasn't overwhelming her anymore. He was exhausting himself. A murmuring ripple passed through the crowd. Even Tessel, ever the dramatic, hesitated. Wait. She's not just surviving, she's adjusting. Lani stood again, face bruised, chest heaving. Her baton sparked faintly, nearly dead. Garoon snarled and lifted both arms for a crushing double strike that had ended dozens before. And Lani smiled. She wasn't winning. Not yet, but she was no longer losing either. The air in the Sky Vault arena hung thick with tension. Dust floated in golden beams of artificial sunlight, cast from the massive ceiling domes high above. The roar of the crowd had dulled to a low hum, like the universe itself was holding its breath. Down on the broken battlefield, Garoon stood tall, massive chest rising and falling with angry, uneven breaths. His armor was chipped, his left arm twitched. For the first time in years, he was unsure. Lani Quill stood across from him, battered and bleeding. Her once gray fatigues were torn, stained with sweat and streaked with red. One eye had begun to swell shut, and her right leg was favoring a limp. She looked fragile, almost done. The pulse baton in her hand flickered, its energy, core nearly drained. The crowd believed they were moments away from the end. So did Garoon. He roared, a sound that shook the arena walls and echoed through the bones of everyone listening. He stomped forward, dragging a claw across the ground, carving a glowing scar into the floor. "Yield," he growled through his translator. No shame in accepting weakness. Lani didn't answer. She rolled her shoulder slowly, wincing as something popped back into place. Her breaths were sharp and shallow, but steady. Garoon took another step. His claws scraped together with a sound like steel teeth grinding. Then, she did something no one expected. Lani let go of her weapon. She simply opened her hand. The pulse baton dropped with a soft clatter and rolled a few inches across the cracked floor before the power died completely. The lights on the baton blinked out. The crowd erupted. The concession was clear. She had surrendered. Surely this was it. Up in the private boxes, the sovereign guilds relaxed in their seats. One ambassador laughed out loud. She gave up with flair. I'll give her that. Tessel, the commentator, nearly sang into the mic. Ladies and gentlemen in species of indeterminate classification, the human has laid down her weapon. What bravery. What noble acceptance of defeat. Even Garoon froze. For a moment his claws hovered in the air, unsure. Most species, when surrendering, curled into protective stances or dropped to their knees. Lonnie didn't. She stayed standing, chin up, hands loose at her sides like someone waiting for a train to arrive. Calm. Ready. Garin lowered his arms a little. You surrender? He asked. Lonnie tilted her head slightly and finally spoke, voice dry and quiet but somehow carrying across the arena. No, she said. I'm just done warming up. The silence that followed was total. Even the stadium drones stopped moving, their fans whirring softly as if stunned. Somewhere in the stands a child dropped their snack. Then she moved. It wasn't a run. It wasn't even a dash. It was a single step that launched her into motion so fast that 3 tracking cameras failed to register the beginning of it. One moment Lonnie was standing. The next she was in the air, spinning past Garen's right arm as it swung too late to intercept her. Her hands found a seam beneath his left shoulder plate, just a slight gap in the armor designed for movement. She pressed down fast and hard. There was a distinct snap. Garen's arm dropped limp. He roared in confusion, not pain. He turned, swinging with the other arm, but Lonnie wasn't there. She had already rolled behind him, striking another nerve, cluster behind his knee. The leg buckled, sending Garen to one side, nearly falling. The ground trembled. From the announcer's booth, Tessel's voice cracked. What in the black moons are we watching? Garen lashed out wildly, trying to catch her. His massive claws struck air again and again. Lonnie was moving around him like she'd been practicing this moment for months, reading his body like a map. Each step was controlled. Each strike was subtle. A flick of the wrist here, a pressure point there. Nothing flashy, nothing forceful, just efficient. He tried to back away. She followed. He swung both arms. She slid under him. A strike to the base of his spine made him stumble forward, eyes wild. No one in the crowd cheered now. They were silent, leaning in, mouths slightly open, watching as their champion unraveled. Lonnie leapt onto Garoon's back with the quiet grace of someone boarding a bus. She reached under the base of his helmet and tapped a spot just behind his skull. His limbs spasmed, flailing in random directions. The crowd gasped. Garoon's own hands clawed at the air at his sides as though they no longer listened to him. Then she dropped back down, circled in front of him, and landed softly on her feet. Garoon stood, trembling, arms twitching, knees locked. She stepped, close and delivered one final strike. Just a small push to his chest with both palms. It wasn't hard, but it triggered a full system collapse. His body froze. His mouth opened in a confused grunt. And then he stopped. He didn't fall. He didn't cry out. He just stopped moving. Lonnie backed away and stood still, breathing softly. In front of her, the most dangerous being in the galaxy stood like a statue, locked in place, eyes wide with something that looked a lot like fear. Around them, the crowd said nothing. Not because they didn't want to, but because they didn't know how. Silence had a weight to it now. Not just the absence of noise, but the kind of stillness that made every being in the Sky Vault arena aware of their own breathing. Garoon, the champion who had split mountains and outlived 3 empires, stood frozen mid-strike. His body trembled slightly as if confused by its own refusal to move. His massive eyes, always full of fire, now blinked slowly, dazed and uncomprehending. He was still conscious. He was still standing. But he was done. Lonnie Quill didn't gloat. She didn't raise her fists or shout or look to the crowd for applause. She simply stood in front of him, head tilted slightly as if inspecting a machine she had just shut off. Her arms relaxed at her sides. Her eyes scanned the arena like she was taking a mental photograph of every stunned face staring back at her. Then she smiled. It wasn't a wide grin. It wasn't mocking or cruel. It was quiet, subtle, like someone who had just finished something unpleasant and was now thinking about what to eat for dinner. That smile did more damage than any punch she'd thrown. Someone in the front row screamed. No one could say later who it was. Some swore it was a vendor. Others thought it was a low-ranking diplomat from Varka 9. But whoever it was, the sound cut through the silence like a blade. It triggered something primal. A ripple of unease surged through the crowd. And then they ran. It began with a shuffle. A few audience members stood up too quickly. Security drones pivoted their sensors, confused by the sudden movement. Then someone jumped the barrier. Another shoved past their neighbor. The ripple turned into a wave. In moments, the arena exploded into chaos. Seats toppled. Drinks spilled. Stalls overturned. Screams and stomping feet echoed in every direction as beings of all shapes and sizes bolted for the exits. Species, with wings, flew straight up into the upper tiers, trampling over those who hadn't yet moved. Amphibious spectators slid through railings. Even the most elite guests in the floating guild boxes evacuated with the kind of panic usually reserved for meteor strikes. One Havari ambassador shed its entire ceremonial exosuit, abandoning jewelry worth more than a moon colony just to squeeze through a vent. A quantum-bodied melon phased halfway into a wall and got stuck, shimmering with panic. Even the arena's own announcer, Tessel, dropped the microphone and ducked behind his podium. Feathers puffed out like an emergency flare. All while Lonnie Quill hadn't moved a single inch. Garoon remained upright, breathing heavy, but still paralyzed, his massive body now nothing more than a warning sign. Around them, the storm of feet and voices rushed out in waves. Automated systems mistook the rush for a building-wide threat and triggered evacuation protocols. Lights flashed red. Emergency alarms howled. Giant doors groaned open. And Lonnie just stood there, calm as ever. The match had ended 14 seconds earlier. That was all it took. 14 seconds for everything the galaxy believed about humans to begin unraveling. In a control room far above the arena, tournament, officials huddled together behind screens, replaying the footage in silence. Someone finally whispered, "We've been wrong, about all of it. No weapons," another added. "No enhanced armor. She didn't even use the full charge of her baton." "She never needed to," the first replied. Across the galaxy, news feeds lit up. Recordings of the match spread faster than any virus ever had. Experts rewrote articles mid-sentence. Military strategists called emergency meetings. Every major interstellar government revised their classification for humanity. They were no longer seen as mildly capable or emotionally volatile. A new label began circulating before the arena had even fully emptied. Existential threat. But back in the arena, only Lonnie remained. Well, her, Garoon, and 7 unlucky vendors who'd hidden behind a broken food kiosk and now debated quietly whether it was safer to run or just pretend to be unconscious. Lonnie exhaled slowly and looked up at the nearest drone camera. Then she turned and walked out. She didn't run. She didn't hurry. She simply strolled through the ruined battlefield and exited through a side door as if leaving a meeting that had gone a little longer than expected. No one tried to stop her. No one dared. 3 standard days later, she arrived quietly back on her ship and requested clearance to return to Earth. She declined every interview, ignored every message. She didn't even take the tournament trophy. Just Garoon's ceremonial armband, handed to her in silence once the champion regained motor control. It was the only thing he had to offer her. She accepted it with a nod and said nothing. The Skyvault Arena was permanently shut down. In its place, a new facility was built. A trauma recovery and interspecies diplomacy center. No more gladiator games. No more blood sport. Only quiet. Footage of the match became required viewing in military academies, diplomatic schools, and cultural sensitivity courses across 17 systems. Researchers studied her movements frame by frame, trying to understand how a soft-skinned species had unmade the galaxy's most dangerous warrior without breaking a sweat. Eventually, one historian put it simply, she showed us a truth we never wanted to admit, that the deadliest force in the universe isn't strength, it's restraint. And across the stars a new phrase spread, spoken with both fear and respect. Never cheer when a human drops their weapon.